This country is currently experiencing an economic low from debts in the trillions caused by previous wars and foreign trade. Foreign trades are leaving the country trillions in debt, and farmers and manufacturers, caused by the loss of jobs due to outsourcing, are going bankrupt. The cause is the high tariffs created by the American-China trade wars, according to Time magazine. So how do we solve national debts and keep farmers and U.S. manufacturers in business? How do we turn back from this economic depression that is soon to devastate us all? With the country rising up in riots, destroying cities, and the hope of our future as a stable and successful country of the world being threatened, and poverty on the verge of tearing our country apart. How do we make a change that will affect our country positively? I offer a three-piece solution to this issue, but first, let's establish some statistics and facts about the trouble economically our country is in. China owns about $1.1 trillion worth of America's debt right now. According to Wikipedia, the amount of America's national debt totals out to be $26.7 trillion. $7.04 trillion of that debt is owned by foreign countries. As of now, the U.S. has the largest external debt in the world. $2.2 trillion of that debt is because of the coronavirus relief put in effect by President Trump. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the budget deficit would increase to $3.3 trillion for the fiscal year of 2020. They also say that the debt held by the public would rise to 98%. The debt by the public in 2007 held by the public before the Great Recession was only 35%. My three-piece solution proposes we minimize trade with foreign countries to almost none, encourage local farmers to focus on processing foods to feed our country, and forget about trying to process goods such as soybeans, rice, corn, and industries to stop producing steel, and our most important export, knowledge, which other countries have fed off of for centuries, and encourage locals to only buy produce that are specifically made in the U.S. to minimize foreign trade and help aid farmers in their struggle to avoid mass bankruptcy numbers because of the U.S.-China trade wars. The effects of buying from local farms and buying products only made in America will affect our country in three different important areas: locally, then expanding to the U.S. as a whole, and the amount of national debt. This will be the area of focus during this discussion. According to Time magazine, 100,000 American farms have been lost to bankruptcy between 2011 and 2018, and farm debt is at an all-time high of $416 billion. Suicides among farming communities are also happening in devastating numbers. President Trump's tariffs toward China made them turn to other countries for goods such as soybeans and corn. Trump has made $16 billion in aid available to farmers affected by the trade war. The 1-800 hotline for farmers facing crisis was up to 109% from the year before, says the Director of Farm Aids Advocacy and Farmer Services. Of that $16 billion handed out to aid farmers, most of it is going to large corporate farms to cover large crop losses. And smaller farms are not getting much of it at all. This is only to fuel the monopoly of large farms and government input to policy and politics that aid corporate farms and help put smaller farms out of business. Our country is in really bad shape, and it's only getting worse. I offer solutions and a cause and effect system that will potentially create change for the better. In the rest of this discussion, I will offer solutions as well as the effects it will have on our country. God knows we sincerely need it. Aside from these farms are smaller local farms. Aside from these corporate farms are smaller local farms. These are the ones that are going into debt and headed for bankruptcy, and in which the suicide rate is skyrocketing. If corporate farmers are only interested in mass profit and foreign trade, then smaller farms need to focus on making their money by feeding their community and surrounding towns, and encourage small businesses to buy their goods. Smaller farms have to get more inventive if they want to survive. Small town farmers markets need to be a large focus with advertising to the public. If smaller businesses refuse to buy goods by large corporate farm contracts and promise to rely only on local regional farmers that are struggling, and create a smaller, more localized economic ecosystem that feeds its own needs and relies less on the government, on governmental restraints and corporate farming that only care about profit instead of supply and demand. If smaller farms start only raising crops to feed their community, and in larger varieties such as corn, lettuce, tomatoes, squash, beans, potatoes, cucumbers, etc., their efforts, smaller communities will recognize their efforts as well and start buying more local goods. Smaller farms will no longer worry about keeping up with the concerns of most corporate farms, which would be foreign trade and mass profits, usually distribution to large cities. Small farms need to focus more on a local scale instead of large contracts. The next thing that needs to happen is that the U.S. citizens, at least in smaller, more internally involved communities, need to support their local farms and only buy produce grown in the United States. If locals start buying more produce from their local farmers and only buy produce labeled made in USA, then foreign trade for imported produce will all but cease, causing the government to focus their attention on local farms instead of foreign imports because of the impact it would have on trade. If U.S. citizens in general would do this, then the same effect would be given toward foreign trade, at least if they just buy goods made in the U.S. and making foreign produce more expensive would be a side effect. If smaller communities would make an effort to buy their goods from local farmers, then smaller farms would have more success. If schools started buying a lot of their cafeteria foods from local farmers and only meat products made here, then the livelihood of smaller farms would have a lot better chance of surviving. Why feed a farm that's in Boise, Idaho, for example, if there's a large potato producer that's within your vicinity? Bartleman, Mississippi, for example. If we encourage the U.S. as a whole, as well as smaller communities, to buy from American companies and small farms, then the number of farms and businesses being put out of business and the increase of suicides will reduce greatly. Larger business are protected by government policies, and they are put in place to control commercial markets, not small town markets and local restaurants and vendors. If we all take a part in saving the local farms in America by buying all American, then we can save and ensure the survival as local producers and shows that we care about our local farmers as well as our businesses. Because of the rise in debts for the smaller farms and massive numbers of bankruptcies, the suicide rates have escalated to increasingly large numbers. It's sad to know that the decisions we make when buying our groceries are potentially causing so many farmers to lose their families' farms that have lasted for generations, and eventually leading to our own people to take their lives. We can also help ease their debts and decrease suicide rates among farming communities by supporting them on a personal level by shopping from our hearts, not our wallets. Even if it's just a bit more expensive, it's just the right thing to do. Macro level change. On a macro level, if we all choose to support local farmers and U.S. products and goods, then we are increasing the amount of jobs and incomes that stay within our country. The U.S. as a whole will become more sufficient and less reliant on foreign trade. The more we keep our money in the U.S. and feed our towns and our communities, our farms and businesses with our money, then the more internal revenue will grow. Even if the exports still continue and we make revenue off it, the number of imports will decrease to a point that we will only be exporting for the most and few to no imports, excuse me. We are a great nation and there's nothing that we can't produce, make, build, or create. Why do we need anything from another country when there isn't a climate nor resource that we do not have within this great nation? Why do we need foreign work/goods? The answer is we got lazy and dependent on convenience. As I mentioned in my last point, we are a great nation. We don't need foreign goods or work. It's only out of convenience. We have every foreign climate available to make any kind of produce in the world, from mountainous regions to the Great Plains, from tropical soils to coastal waters, more desert that could be incorporated with large factories, and more wasted space that has no use to benefit instead of waste. We can build anything that can be imported other than foreign cars. So why not internalize industry again and bring industry back home and eliminate foreign competition? More jobs for us and less dependency. If in fact we produce all our own goods, manufacture all our own machinery, clothing, etc., we internalize most all our income, create more jobs for U.S. citizens, and make a brighter future with less, if not anyone, living in poverty. Crime rates will also reduce to numbers we haven't seen in a long time. As a result of internalizing our own affairs to make money, the level of America's education and amount of job opportunities will rise to a great increase. With more self-sufficiency comes more job opportunities, thus bringing more income for growth amongst our communities, more income and lower poverty rates in our nation. The level of educational opportunities will rise with a rise in internal job opportunities. More jobs equals better job opportunities equals opportunities for higher education. The average educational level of the United States will rise thanks to more job opportunities and a need to fill higher than entry-level positions. The third thing that will happen as we embrace our assertion towards supporting local farmers, buying only our own nation's goods, and internalizing our needs in the workforce industry, is we will begin to see our nation's debt dissolve over a period of about 10 years. A $26 trillion deficit is a lot to consider, especially since we don't have the means to pay it back. If we internalize our money and keep increasing internal revenue and production, the deficit of needs materially will not only diminish, but we will have so much that our cup will continue to overflow. Farmers will produce the great majority of their goods to be internalized, and the increased wealth and increase wealth and create more jobs and less foreign dependency. Factories will increase, bringing fabric producers, etc., back to the U.S. and quit focusing on low expenditure and focus more on internal health of our society. We will continue producing for our own sustainable needs and quit our foreign dependency to the point that our export labels will be 10 times our import labels, maximizing national profits. Even if tariff taxes on foreign goods remain high, we will become the world's produce and manufacturing industries leader once again. The rest of the world will become dependent on our exports instead of the convenience paying off in their favor. Our debts can be paid off as a trade of goods for half the price to knock down our debts to other world societies until the debt is paid. Even if the foreign countries refuse to take off debt on a half-price wager, then we will have more than enough to sell to other countries, and we can just charge them full price and put our profits up toward the debt, which would in turn be the same as a half-price voucher. As a self-sufficient country, the debt has no choice but to dissolve. With debt comes responsibility. If we waive tariff taxes to pay off the debt we have with foreign countries, then our debt would dissolve. With an abundance of goods and produce, we have a way to repay the money, offer goods for repayment, or simply keep producing, keep selling, and keep paying our bills, including our excess debts. As our country continues to prosper from within and refuses to rely on foreign entities for foreign goods and outsourcing work, the increase of national income will make up the deficit. We need a lot more money coming in and little to none going out for goods and services. So how do we solve national debts and keep farmers and U.S. manufacturers in business? How do we turn back from this economic depression that is soon to devastate us all? We localize our produce by only buying from local American farms. We take matters into our own hands by making decisions to buy local. We feed our local businesses and internalize our spending and minimize our imports. And we increase our internal production and quit relying on foreign trade for more profit and convenience. And we trust our government to do their job as we change and demand a specific trade and job policy and vote for hopefully the right leaders to do so. Thank you.